Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 1989 Jaws ripoff film that is Italian-made, Killer Crocodile. Bought this one from Severin Films. As you might be able to tell just from looking at this, looks really good because it's a Blu-ray, and I didn't watch the special features on this at this point, but I do know that there's a Killer Crocodile 2 that I don't think has been put out by Severin. Hopefully they do that pretty soon because I would be interested in seeing it. And apparently the films were like simultaneously shot. So I guess from the get-go they had the idea that they were always going to be doing a Killer Crocodile 2 and putting it out not long after the first one. So this is a fun Jaws ripoff. If you know me, you've been watching my channel long enough, you know that I've become a pretty big fan of Jaws ripoffs. I really enjoyed them for some reason. Don't fully know why. I think just like water-based horror is something that draws me in. I'm a big fan of like aquariums and stuff, so I think that's kind of where that kind of spawns from. But anyway, let's talk about Killer Crocodile. Directed by Fabrizio De Angelis, who also did Deadly Impact, The Manhunt, Cobra Mission, Karate Warrior 1 through 6, and Breakfast with Dracula. That's just some films. I just picked out, some choice-sounding titles for you. Written by De Angelis as well as Dardano Sacchetti, who's done a ton of scripts for Italian horror films. Some of his work, a small amount, includes Demons, Demons 2, 1990, The Bronx Warrior, The Scorpion with Two Tails, A Bay of Blood, Cat o' Nine Tails, The New York Ripper, The Psychic, and Manhattan Baby, which some of those I've actually a lot of those I've actually reviewed, especially all the Giallo ones. The effects makeup for this film was actually done by Jeff Goodwin, who worked on a bunch of films that you'll recognize, and that's why the effects are actually pretty solid in this film. Rambo 3, Virus, The Night Flyer, Empire Records, the 90s version of the Super Mario Brothers film, The Last of the Mohicans, which I love that film, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Blue Velvet, Manhunter, Cat's Eye, Silver Bullet, and a more recent one, The Black Phone. So, still working. Very impressive. Let's get into the actual film itself. Immediately, you're seeing the croc in this, or at least parts of the croc in this. You're seeing like the foot, and then you're seeing the face, and they look good. Like the construction of the actual croc is good. It looks solid. It doesn't move a whole lot, and that's where like the so bad it's good comes into play. Which, by the way, I will be rating this on a overall regular scale, but also a so bad it's good scale because this is more of a so bad it's good film. You can just assume that from Jaws ripoff films, in my opinion, but. Immediately, the croc is awesomely bad because of how wooden its movements are. It doesn't move a whole lot, so it just looks super hilarious anytime it's actually going anywhere. Also, they do for the POV shots in the water. They just literally put the cameraman in the water who just acted as the crocodile, but what are you going to do? And that's kind of obviously ripping straight off Jaws because of that whole like Jaws shark POV that they would do in the film. So obviously they're going to do the same thing in Killer Crocodile. The other thing that they ripped off directly from Jaws, well, not directly, but they ripped it off and they kind of put their own flourish on it, is the theme song. If you listen to the Killer Crocodile theme song, it is very Jaws inspired. That iconic Jaws theme song is, you can almost hear it buried in the Killer Crocodile theme song. So make sure you listen to that and check that out. In the beginning of the film, a couple having a peaceful day by the lake, and then here comes the Killer Crocodile to ruin that for them. He's going to ruin their day. He's going to kill them. And you know this is going to happen, because whenever there's a setup like that, you've seen the Killer Croc already. Now you're seeing these people who you don't know, they don't seem like they're important characters, having a nice time. You just know the Croc is coming to mess all of that up. And that is what happens. So it's a pretty solid start. The first attack scene is bad, but in a funny way, so good time. And I do like how the dude with the guitar wasn't even really paying attention to the woman when she's having all these cries for help. He's so, like, balls deep in his music that he's just like, he hears nothing, And I think that's kind of where they're going, is like, he's playing so loudly, even though it's an acoustic guitar, so it wouldn't have been that loud, that he can't hear her. That's the excuse. Now, the croc popping up out of nowhere, then the title popping up, is probably one of my favorite moments of the film. Amazingly done. I love that. It's actually legitimately good and cool. That's the part where you're showing, after that first scene, you're seeing two fishermen in a boat, and they're kind of, just talking about whatever. And everything's calm. Everything seems cool. And then all of a sudden, the croc just pops right up out of the water. And then it opens its jaws, and the title is like in its mouth. Super cool. Love how they did that. It looks awesome. Like, that's an actual moment of this film that's not a so bad it's good moment. It literally looks good. The toxic waste dumping being talked about in this film early on gives you the exact reason for the crocodile's size. And at this point, this is 1989, we've already seen a lot of mutated creature films. I mean, even going as far back to like the 50s, 60s, where they were having, giant critters it's because of like radiation. And that, because of the toxic waste, that's what's going on here. They literally say that there's radiation in the water from this toxic waste that's being dumped by this company, or by this one dude, Foley, and being looked the other way by Judge. It's just literally Judge in this film. But yeah, so as soon as you hear that, you're conditioned well enough to know that's going to be the reason that the croc is supersized. So they don't need to, after that, explain a whole lot. Like, literally just that one little bit, like, oh, there's toxic waste in the water. It's radioactive. That's all you need to hear. And then you're just like, okay, I get it. I now accept this premise of this ridiculously large crocodile that's now aggressive. So, a history of film has paid off for this one. The POV goggle shots of Bob exploring the water with the Geiger counter looks interesting, but at the same time, it looks dumb. So it's kind of like this, it's so bad it's good, but it's also kind of cool and interesting. I don't know. But the other thing I want to say about that is, it's funny how he's literally going out into the water with a Geiger counter. So he's checking for radiation, and then he's like, yeah, it's radioactive. And everyone's like, get out of there, get out of there, get out of there. Why'd you send him in there in the first place then? Couldn't you have, like, I don't know, put the Geiger counter, like, on something? And I don't know. He was all done up in the proper suit, though, so I don't know. It just seemed kind of weird that, like, he's literally going out there to find out if it's radioactive. It is, and they're like, stop. So it was just kind of weird. But the dialogue in this, generally not great, especially because it's dubbed. That's the way I watched it. That's the way I prefer to watch these old Italian horror films, is dubbed, because, I don't know, I just feel like that's the way it's supposed to be. It's just fun that way. As soon as I ended up seeing the dog in the film, Candy, I think is the dog's name, I was like, that dog's dying. There's no way that dog does not die, because anytime there's a large animal film like this, the dog will die if there's a dog in the film, for the most part. There may be some exceptions. I haven't seen any of those exceptions, so I knew it. The dog gets it, and the dog does get it. And honestly, for the most part, the actual kills in this aren't even that good. There are a few that are pretty good, and they kind of stand out, but for the most part, they're not that great. So I think that what helps with that is, the end of the film, which I'll talk about when I get to that portion, but also the fact that they do throw in, like, maybe one or two, like, actual good deaths, plus the Killer Croc, actually, the design of it looking good, even though it doesn't move very well. I do like how the group, these ecologists, I guess, just naturally assume that one of their friends, Conchita, just kind of up and left out of nowhere before any of them woke up in the morning. Didn't that seem a little bit off to everyone? They were just like, oh, she probably just got up early and just took off. You guys are there on an expedition as a group, and you just calmly are just like, yeah, she just took off. So they're not really concerned. Seems a little bit weird. But, that's what you're going to get with films like this. And, of course, the judge is in cahoots with the company causing this Killer Croc issue, because that's a well-established thing that happens in these types of films. It happens all the time. The way Conchita's body pops up when it's eventually found, I think, is hilarious. Also, the look on her face. Like, take note of the look on her face. I can't replicate it, but it's in my mind. It's just very funny the way she looks. And she, like, pops up like she's, like, this stiff board of wood that just, like, popped up out of the water. It's hilarious. I mean, the body would have, like, just kind of, like, floated up, but it's just, like, whoop, like, totally erect, just, like, whoop. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. I love it, though. So bad it's good aspect of it. I do like how immediately Foley starts accusing the group of killing Conchita, because obviously this is him trying to be like, this doesn't have anything to do with this killer crocodile that I basically created by dumping toxic waste into this swamp. No, look over here. So he just starts being like, yeah, you guys went out there with her. You probably killed her. He even, like, makes some sort of reference to the fact that he thinks one of the guys got, like, handsy with her, and then things got out of control and they killed her. And you're just like, okay. There is such a thing as going too hard at this stuff so that you do look more suspicious. And I think Foley kind of does that, obviously. But, you know, as a viewer, it doesn't really matter to you because it's already been established to you that he's a terrible person and what he's up to. So, pause real quick for horror hydration. Thanks. Obviously, Joe is the Quint character. Rough, gruff animal hunter Joe shows up, and he's got a grudge against this croc because for some reason he very much believes that this crocodile is specifically after him, although this croc hasn't come after him. Although I wonder if later on when they show those really gnarly scars that he has, which do look super, super gnarly, if that's supposed to insinuate the fact that he has come across this crocodile before and they have tussled. I don't know. Like, maybe I missed that portion or whatever. I've only watched this film one time at this point. So, yeah. And I haven't seen the second one. I'm going to throw that out there as well. But, yeah. So, obviously, Joe is the Quint character from Jaws. That's very obvious. It looks so amazingly awful when the croc chomps on the first townsperson. Especially because, you know, like, the movements are so crappy and, like, you see the person's not actually getting torn up. They literally just put him in the jaws of this fake crocodile and threw a bunch of fake blood in it and just had it kind of, like, be like this. And then he kind of... It did look kind of cool, though, when he kind of, like, moves over the side and just kind of, like, takes him underwater with him. Because that is, you know, something that a croc would do is, you know, have something in its jaws and take it under to drown it. So... I found the dialogue between Joe and Tom about the special ammunition to be quite funny. I did like that one. Again, speaking to the dubbing of this, like the English translation that they put into it, being just kind of ridiculous, you know? Excuse me. I have a hard time understanding why Joe thinks the croc is specifically after him, especially when it's been killing other people. Like, yeah, I talked about this already, but it literally seems like it's going after literally everyone else but Joe. And there's no point where it seems like it's specifically going after him until Joe himself goes after the crocodile and, you know, ends up jumping on its back, which I'll talk about in a second. Well, not a second, but in a bit. I do like when you finally see a lot more of the croc. Because the big thing is the size of this thing legitimately is impressive. They did a really good job. Like I said before, the design of it is cool, but also just the pure size that they made it. It looks super imposing. It looks like it could take a whole boat out. I like that aspect of it. Sorry. And as soon as the group understands that saving the croc is not an option, who shows up to save the day? The Quint character, Joe. We always knew that was going to happen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been introduced into the film at all in the first place. So he shows up once, you know, these people who have been advocating for the safety of this crocodile figure out, okay, this will just kill us. So we have no options here. Enter Joe. The best kill in this film is probably Foley's arm-ripping scene, and then the fact that you end up getting an explosion of the boat after that. Like that. It's this moment where it's like, oh, okay, actually, most of the kills haven't been cool at this point. You see the arm rip scene, you know, it looks pretty good effects-wise. There's plenty of blood, and you're just like, okay, that's cool. Then you don't expect the explosion that's coming right after it, and you're like, bingo, bonus on that one. I like that. It is funny when Joe's throwing insults at the crocodile. They're like driving around looking for it, and he's just throwing out insults. And then he explains to Kevin that crocodiles are sensitive. and they don't like it when you're making fun at them and calling them names. So I just found that to be weird, very weird. Maybe that's just another like English dubbed translation issue, but just a weird thing. And funny. I do like how Joe gets on the Croc's back and starts stabbing it at one point. You know, he's shooting it with the shotgun repeatedly. Nothing's happening. It just calmly just kind of swims right by the boat. He jumps on top of it and starts stabbing it with, I think, a gaff. And it's not reacting. I mean, eventually it ends up like going underwater, and it's insinuated that, you see all that blood coming up. So it's chomping him, but but it is just ridiculous that he jumps on it, it doesn't react. Then he's stabbing it, it still is not reacting. It's just, it goes towards the so bad it's good aspect of this film in a good way. Of course, there are crocodile eggs in this film. And obviously they end the film that way. I'll just say it now. They end the film with one of those eggs that they missed because they killed some other ones. There's still an egg there, and it's hatching because there's a crocodile too. We know this at this point, so it makes sense. Kevin shoots at the croc repeatedly after he just witnessed Joe doing the same thing with absolutely no result. That's another thing that's like, this makes absolutely no sense because he was there watching Joe repeatedly shoot this thing with a shotgun. Nothing happened because of it. He ended up having to jump on it, ends up getting killed. And here he is, Kevin, just boom, 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 boom. Guess what? Nothing happens. Sorry, need some more. Yeah, ridiculous. Just totally ridiculous. And then the question becomes, how did Joe survive? How did Joe survive? Because he pops up like in the lair of the croc. He's all bloody. He's actually got some bits of flesh just kind of like hanging off him. He seems like he's actually doing fine other than that. Like his appearance, he seems like physically and like mentally totally good. It's just his appearance doesn't look the most appealing because of this fight with the croc. But how did he survive that? He was literally taken underwater and there was tons of blood that came up. How did he survive that? It just doesn't make any sense. Again, so bad it's good. Now, the boat propeller being cranked up, thrown into the croc's mouth, awesome. That is my favorite scene. I love the title scene where the croc jumps up and the title's in its mouth. But this scene is phenomenal. I didn't expect this. The fact that they used the boat propeller, chuck it in its mouth, the way they shot that, it literally looks like they just had like a bunch of like chum or like actual like animal guts that they put in water with extra blood, and they just actually have the propeller hitting it, so it looks like it's actually just ripping up the mouth and the insides of this croc. Looked awesome. Then you throw on top of that all the wild blood splatter that's going on that's hitting Kevin. Awesome. Love it. It's an awesome effects moment. It is a funny moment too, so it just keeps playing into the so bad it's good aspect of the film. Then there are explosions with the croc, which don't make any sense, but I'll take it. I'm in for it. Like, I'm here for it. I'm totally here for these random croc explosions that don't make any sense. I guess the idea is that, like, the propeller ends up overheating. You do see some sparking from it, and then it just ends up exploding because there's gas in there. I guess. Joe ends up telling Kevin to keep his hat that he gave him because it's passing the torch. Because now at this point, since he killed the croc that was coming after Joe, Kevin is the new Joe, basically. Now, I have not seen Killer Croc 2, but I would assume that Kevin is more in like a Joe capacity in the second one. Maybe I'll find out if I'm right. These are on Tubi, by the way. Both of them, the first and second one. So I might watch the second one on there. Okay, going to some thematic stuff at the end of the film. This film has a very commonly used theme of humans negatively impacting nature, which then comes back to bite them, literally in this instance. Again, this has been something that's been used so many times. Evil company dumping waste causes an ecological or nature-related problem. That problem becomes a big problem for humans. This gets used so many times. Then this is the less apparent one. There's a whole civilized society versus uncivilized society issue at play in the film. This is kind of very much more subtext and was unintended. White people are the ones doing all the saving in this film, but it is also white people causing all the problems in the first place in this film. If you notice that, there are townsfolk. None of them are white. Everyone's here from another country, and they're saving the day, but they also cause the problem, white people in general. It shows this how civilized people just show up and do what they want in another country. It's this kind of like imperialism, colonialism issue of, you know, white people just showing up in another country and deciding that we can do whatever we want. You know, just inflicting their will on this country, and then things go wrong because of the will that's been inflicted on this country. And then these white saviors show up to be like, we're the heroes. We're going to take care of this. We're going to save it. Well, guess what? This wouldn't have been a problem in the first place if it wasn't for you. So, like I said, it's not intentional in this film, but you can easily see it in the film. And I think that's kind of interesting to note. So, out of 5 stars with half stars in play, as an actual, like, straight up film, 1.5 stars, I gotta say. But as a so bad it's good film, I'm going to go 3.5. I think it's really enjoyable as a so bad it's good film. My wife watched it with me, and she actually said that she didn't hate it. She was like, it is actually kind of entertaining. She had a good enough time with it, and she's not a person who's into horror films, so I trust that this is a film that's very watchable for people. But I had a fun time with it, 3.5 stars. But now I want to hear your thoughts on this film. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Love it, hate it in between. Just give me like a sentence or two letting me know why. I always hate it when people are just like, I like it, I don't like it. That doesn't mean anything to me, really. So, do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that support. Also, hit the notification bell button if you can, and you can. It's very quick and easy. That way you'll know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 a week at this point. Now, thank you very much for taking your time to watch this particular video. And until next time, keep it brutal.